All right, good evening. The time is 7 p.m. I would like to call the March 28th, 2023 Hsd School Board reorganizational meeting to order. At this time, I'll ask the school board clerk to please take the roll.
Jason Giard.
Here.
Erin Pellegrini.
Here.
David Smith.
Here.
Andy Cabarrus.
Here.
Carl Hubner.
Here.
Thank you. And also seated at the board table is Superintendent of Schools Bob Thompson and CFO Jeff Dowd.
All right, at this time, I'd ask that we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, and I would invite our newest board member to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. So to begin, I'm going to call for nominations for a school board chair. Nominations do not require a second. So at this time, do I have any nominations for school board chair?
I'll go ahead and nominate David Smith.
Okay, Jason Giard nominates David Smith. Are there any other nominations for school board chair? I'm going to ask one additional time. Are there any other nominations for school board chair? Seeing no other nominations, I'd ask the school board clerk to please take the vote.
So all in favor of appointing David Smith as chair? Show of hands. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We can turn the floor over to Mr. Smith.
All right. Thank you all very much for another year. Looking forward to this year with another strong school board. So we are now looking for nominations for the vice chair. All right. We've got a nomination for Erin. And just make sure any other nominations. All right. Then all those in favor of Erin Pellegrini for vice chair, raise a hand.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now we're going to move on to appointments for the 2023-2024 school year for a few other positions. School council. I'm looking for a motion for the recommendation to allow the superintendent or his designee to seek legal counsel when necessary with the law firm most appropriate. Every year we look to allow the superintendent to reach out to counsel without having to go through us for the immediate needs that typically can happen during the day. So we're looking for a...
So moved.
So moved. All right. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, second by Erin. Any questions? Make sense? Mr. Cabarrus, first time. Make sure you have any questions. You can certainly ask.
No questions.
All right. Then all in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. School board clerk. I'll be looking for a motion for the recommendation of Melissa Post, who does an amazing job year after year.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Second that. Any discussion? All right. Then all approved?
Okay, thank you.
We're watching, seeing if anybody said no on that one.
No one ever said.
All right. All right, so the next one is we are looking for a for a member of the board to be the representative for the School Board Association delegate. For the purposes of Mr. Cabarrus, just explain what this is. But for those at home, we are part of the School Board Association, and typically at least once a year they get together to talk about what are things up in Concord that are being voted on, being considered, and also they talk about what they're recommending or what they're trying to influence up in Concord from the school board's perspective, as well as any information coming out about trainings or education that they're giving to school board members, that they're there for us as well. I don't want to say that typically we have the first-year person do this, but it's always a good thing for someone to get into. But it's definitely open for anybody that hasn't done it before. I think it's a good opportunity to volunteer. So, I know Aaron loves to volunteer, but you know,
I went to one, it covered for Megan, it was very interesting, if that helps.
so I'd ask, does anybody, you want to volunteer for that? All right. So we've got our volunteer and Dr. Hubner. Okay, unless anybody else would like to volunteer? Hear anybody else? All right, there'll be plenty of things to volunteer for in this board this year. All right. Just going down here, okay. School district officer, so looking for a recommendation to bond the treasurer as required by statute in Department of Revenue Administration regulations. So.
So moved.
So move.
Second.
Second. Okay. Thank you, both of you. All right. Any discussion, any questions on this? All right. So all approved? All right.
Thank you.
All right, so the next one is the designation of bank depository. So this one I'll be looking for a recommendation to appoint TD Bank, who we've used in the past as the district bank. Anyone look for a motion?
So moved.
All right.
I was trying to give someone else a chance.
And a second?
Second.
All right, and then all approved? All right, look at us flowing. It's already, might even get ahead. Let's see, knock on wood here. All right, so for annual policies, procedures, in your packets, there are 3 policies to review. I'd like you to take your time to take a look at these. First one is our investment policy, DFA, as RSA states to review this annually. We also have the risk management policy, I think it's EL, try to read here, EI, to be reviewed by advice of our legal counsel. And then we also have the controls over expenditures and funds procedure. So. And I don't know if anybody has any questions for Mr. Dowd on any of these policies, but traditionally all 3 of these fall under his preview as far as some direction in there. So if there's any questions about what you read, certainly ask, but there's no vote here. This was just part of our annual review. So I'd look to, if everybody's had time to review these. Dr. Hubner, you good? All right. All right, next one is the scheduling of meetings. As you can see, this is for the 2023-2024 school board meetings. There are a few two tentatives. We usually put the first one, which is the first meeting in August, which is always the second Tuesday, as tentative. We sometimes skip that one. And then sometimes the very last meeting, we do also skip. So it depends on what's going on towards the end of the year for that. I am looking for the recommendation to hold the school board meetings, continue with this on the second and fourth Tuesdays of each month at 7 p.m. at the middle school.
So moved.
All right. Second?
Second.
Any discussions, questions? All right. Then looking for all to approve, raise your hand.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let's go. All right. So the next one is the Code of Ethics, Policy BCA, which we look to have all board members sign on an annual basis. There is a copy of this in your packets, board members. So if you want to take just a moment to read over this, and if you feel comfortable right now to sign your life away. If you wouldn't mind passing that down to Melissa. If you guys want to pass them down, we'll do like back in school, pass it to the teacher. Thank you. All right. Let's see, make sure I get this. All right. I'm going to go ahead and, unless there's any questions, I'm going to adjourn this reorganization meeting at 7:13 p.m. 2 minutes ahead. Bonus, we're ahead on something. All right. So let me just get everything organized. All right. So I'm going to call to order our regular board meeting, March 28th, 2023. I will ask Melissa to please do the roll call for this one as well.
Sure. Jason Giard,
Here.
Erin Pellegrini,
Here.
David Smith,
Here.
Mr. Cabarrus, Andy Cabarrus,
Here.
Carl Hubner, and our Pinkerton student liaison, Shannon Caffell.
Here.
Thank you. And we also have seated at the board table, Superintendent of Schools, Bob Thompson, and CFO, Jeff Dowd.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to go into the approval of the meeting minutes. Board members, you do have one set of meeting minutes from February 21st, the regular meeting. If you could please take a look, and I'll be looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the regular meeting minutes from February 21st, 2023.
All right. I'll go ahead and second that motion. Any discussion? All right.
I'll abstain from voting since I was not present in the meeting.
Thank you for that. All approved?
I'm abstaining as well. I was not here.
Okay, thank you.
We approve, and those abstain? All right. Very good. All right, so public comments, Melissa. I'm going to guess we don't, but I'll ask anyways.
You would be correct. We do not have any tonight.
Good assumption. All right. So next we have school highlights, and we'd like to have Principal Milbury to come on up.
Good evening. First, not on my report, but I just wanted to let everyone know I'm excited to share that I just got back literally hours ago from the annual New England League of Middle Schools Conference. It's a 2-day conference, and the first time it has happened in a couple of years. So it was exciting for everyone to be back in person. There were 5 of us from the school at the conference, and it was just a ton of really great workshops. A lot of SEL, as you can imagine, was really the focus. And the theme was from surviving to thriving. So, you know, we've been in kind of survival mode, and now how do we thrive with our students? So the team of 5 took back some really great information and have some great ideas that we can bring back to the school. So our next steps will be to meet and then figure out the best way to present that information we got with the rest of our staff. But super excited to have been able to attend that conference and get some great ideas. Looking for my report. So we have had a lot of fun and awesome things happening. A little biased, but I start with The Wizard of Oz. I'm not sure how many of you were able to see it, but it was a fantastic show. Obviously my first since I've been here, but have heard even lots of people who have been to many shows say that one was just, one of the best that they've had. So the cast and crew and staff did a phenomenal job with The Wizard of Oz. So that was exciting last weekend. We also, after a bit of a snow delay, had our STEAM family night, which our Heather Mayu and Sarah Wise-Carver put together with work from our Ventures kids in this school, as well as some of our leadership kids and also Ventures students at Central School, and just put together a great family night, which started with, we had the giving games way back in December where a lot of our kids put together kind of arcade games, and the students got to go into the gym and experience them all. So they used those and the premise of the giving games to head up the STEAM family night and adding a lot of awesome things. I was sad. I was unfortunately away that night, so I couldn't attend, but it was really well attended, really positive feedback. Some great donations that the students are able to put towards the Salt Box Pantry. There's actually a group of students that's going to go on a field trip to Shaw's to do some shopping with the money that was raised to be able to stock the pantry. So just some really great learning and continuing to foster the leadership that has just been outstanding this year in this building. And so certainly thank you to all the staff that helped make that possible. Prior to that, we had, it feels like a long time ago, I haven't been before the board in a little bit of I have 2 back-to-back meetings, so you had Terrell for 2 back-to-back meetings, and so it feels like it's been a long time since I was up here, but I am proud to say that we had a completely student-run assembly in February, and really focusing on, and students chose the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and just from start to finish planned the whole thing, and it was all of the leadership in our building had the opportunity to be a part of it in some way. Katie Wolf really spearheaded it with her, I don't know how to make that stop, with her leadership RTI group, and I have to say that Mrs. Wolf is a master at letting them do it all. She doesn't lead them, she doesn't, she supports, but she doesn't come up with the ideas, the students do, and they really did, and it was just a fantastic assembly for all of the school to just really learn bits and pieces of, a little bit about Black History Month, and a little bit about sign language, and a lot about kindness and working together, and it was awesome. So that was really a lot of fun and something that we'll continue to do. Our basketball season and cheer season ended. All 4 basketball teams had a good season and made it into the playoffs, so that was nice to see. Our cheer team had some great competitions where they finished quite well in, so everyone's feeling very proud of those teams. Volleyball had a successful intramural, club kind of season with the kids just having a blast playing together, not a lot of pressure, just going out and having fun. So they did really well too. And then lastly, we had 2 different nights under the stars, a 5th grade night and a 7th grade night put on by the science teachers. And partly because the 7th graders, because those students didn't get to the astronomy piece in 5th grade, so that's why we had 2 different grade levels. So it'll continue to happen probably in 5th grade, but it's the Astronomical Association comes in and gets some big telescopes out in the field and you have a chance with your families to really see all the constellations, and they point out just amazing things. Really well received. Families had a good time and have asked that they come back. So I think they're going to work on a spring date as well. Might be a little bit warmer, although I think they did pretty well with weather. And I said, why January? And it's because of what you can see in the night sky in January. It's kind of the optimal time to see it. So that was another really fun event. Hard to believe we are into spring and kind of at that point in the year where we're winding down, if you say, although a very wise person I used to work with said we don't wind down. In middle school, we wind up. So that's starting to happen. Getting really close to DC for 8th grade. I know parents are anxious to get information, and I'm working on getting out the information very soon with permission slips and that kind of thing. So we're in good shape there. Transition meetings are happening with our 8th graders going to Pinkerton. We're having conversations and have set up all kinds of dates for our 4th graders to come up to us, and just getting super excited for the end of the school year. It's hard to believe we're here. Any questions?
I think just commentary. I think one of the things I've seen this year, which is really great, and this both from a parent as well as school members, getting the kids to be more leaders at these conference, the different assemblies. Just in hearing it from some of the students too, and the family members, that challenging them to be a little uncomfortable, but to really lead. It's great. So appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I've said it before, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but I'm just thrilled to be a part of that and watch what these kids can do, because our kids are amazing, and you're right, it's amazing to let them take the lead, and they feel great about it, and they do such a great job, and they have awesome ideas. It's just about being able to let the kids, just listen and let them go with it, and
Yep.
It's been a lot of fun for me.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is the Pinkerton liaisons. Shannon?
All right, so, okay. Not too much from me, even though it's been a while. Things have been pretty laid back at Pinkerton for once. The Spirit team placed second at their state championship, and the boys varsity basketball made it to their championship. It was a super close game, so fun to watch, but sadly they lost in the end. They had a really good season though. Spring sports tryouts and practices are already underway. It feels so crazy that we're already there, and we just got like more than a foot of snow a couple weeks ago. Where did it all go? We took the SATs and PSATs last Thursday. Glad that's over with. I feel like I've been stressing about that for years. The Pinkerton Players presented Anastasia, their spring musical, this past weekend. It was a wonderful show. It was awesome. Yeah. And it's crazy to think we're already about halfway through the second semester. This week is Science Week at Pinkerton. Students in their classes will get to go and see all these presentations, from things about nature to forensic science. And lastly, you're stuck with me for next year.
Yes. All right. That's awesome. Thank you for the update.
Yeah.
And we're okay with being stuck with you.
Okay, good.
All right. So thank you for that, Shannon. All right. So we're going to move on to current business. First one up is Ms. Parsons with a gift receipt.
And actually, I'm up here on behalf of Julie Barbrick, our district social worker. She's the one who coordinated all these efforts. I'm just the one that gets to kind of present this to you. But our friends at the Greater Salem Rotary Club generously provided us with Market Basket gift cards for us to distribute to families in our community. They provided 20 gift cards in the amount of $100 each, bringing us to a total of $2,000 in gift cards. This is an incredible gift for our families, for us to use in the community. And so in accordance with our policy KCD, we ask that you accept this gift from the Rotary Club.
All right. Looking for a motion?
So moved.
There you go. See, Andy's first one. There you go. All right.
I'll second that.
And a second. Any discussion? I'd say thank you to her, thank you to the Rotary, and I'm sure thank you from many families that could use it with inflation the way it is, so definitely much appreciated. With all approved? All right.
Thank you.
So thank you
Jess.
guys so much for your support.
No, thank you, Jess. All right, moving on, we're going to go into the election results review. We definitely have some highlights. Go through these. As you see before you, 2 board members, 1 new, 1 coming back. So that was voted on. Hard race there between the 2 of you and those against you. I didn't, some of the mudslinging out there I didn't like, but you know. All right, we also excited that Don Blaska Jr., not senior, but junior, will be our district moderator going forward for the next 3 years, which is great. Laura Jones will be the treasurer, and Lisa DeMio will be our district clerk. And we'll talk about, we know that the bond did fail, did not receive the 3/5 majority, but it was nice to see everything else passed along the way. You know, I always look at these results and sometimes look at them as surprised we got 201 votes against the general acceptance of reports. But, you know, it is good to see all the other ones. We got a good showing and passed pretty well, as they have traditionally in the past years. So thank you to the voters for what did pass. I don't know if anybody has any commentary, any questions about the vote. We are going to go into talk about the renovation next, though. All right. Before we get into the renovations addition project, I would like to motion to go into a non-public. I'll talk the reason first, but I'll make a motion actually, and then we'll talk about it. So I'd like to make a motion to go into non-public under 91A3 I, considerations of matters relating to preparation, carrying out emergency functions, including training, carrying out functions developed by local state officials to thwart a deliberate act that is intended to result in widespread or severe damage to property, widespread injury, or loss of life. I'll make that motion. Looking for a second. All right. The reason why I'm making this motion is I included the events that had happened yesterday, events and very unfortunate events in Tennessee, as well as in past. Before we talk about anything about the addition or the renovation, I think we got to talk about the security, as that's a piece of this project. And I think there's some things I have questions to the administration and action I would like to propose that would be not probably the best thing to do in public, based on some of the security features I'll be discussing or asking about, and that's why I'm asking them to go to the non-public. So with that, I'll ask Melissa if you could take the roll call on that.
Sure. Mr. Giard?
Yes.
Dr. Hubner? Yes. Mr. Cabarrus?
Yes.
Mrs. Pellegrini?
Yes.
And Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank
Mr. Thompson, to take a look at what is needed by the 2 schools and come to the board with recommendations of where we need to make changes for the future. Not saying those changes will be done immediately, but more to evaluate between now and the 11th. They'll have a number of discussions with the SRO as a safety committee. We also have, coincidentally, Homeland Security coming back on premise April 5th. Thank you. And we're requesting to have a discussion with our local police department ahead of the 11th. And then we'll probably have to go into non-public, because there's definitely a number of items we would not speak to in public about safety measures and what we may do to assist on the challenges. So I just thank you all for that discussion, and move forward with that to see what we get on the 11th and forward from that. All right, so with the renovation project that had not passed at the vote earlier this month, wanted to bring to the board discussion of what's the next steps here. There's definitely a lot of things on the table still. We have a lot of choices ahead of us, but I want to start off with discussion we had a building committee meeting that following week. Mr. Thompson, myself, Mr. Dowd, Dr. Cheney, Mr. Mackey, and members of the building committee that you had met probably about 2 months ago with Mr. Mesa Tejada, Mr. Weimer, and Ms. Parnell also weighing in. I think I got everybody there, Mr. Thompson. And we were talking about the building project and had some very frank discussions, if we look back in history, that we've not received 60% vote in 9 out of 10 years. What was interesting is almost out of every year, we overwhelmingly pass our operating budgets. Almost every year we pass our agreements. We pass most things. We passed the 60s wing when we needed the 50%. So discussions ensued of, does it make sense at this point to look at the building and to break it up even more, to start phasing it in as we have the money available for pieces of the project. The discussions at the building committee discussed that we have roughly, we're going to do some round numbers, so don't hold this to me, Mr. Dowd. I know you like all the way down to the decimals. Round numbers, $750,000 right now in capital reserve. Thankful for the voters to approve the warrant article to allot up to $1 million over the $150,000 at the end of this budget season. So let's just say we get somewhere close to $1 million. So now going into the summer, we have $1.75 million. That's getting us there. It's not exactly there yet, of what we would need for getting pieces of the project. We talked about, another warrant article for next year. We talked about adding money into the operating budget for next year in order to see what, we could get for classrooms. And, we did have the discussion then about safety. We had talked about, okay, if we went after classrooms, could we do other things to shore up the safety as much as possible until we can eventually change that main office area? That, I'm not saying we won't do it, but if it was moved down a little bit so we could get the classrooms. Now, the reason why we felt classrooms right now is because we felt based on population growth as well as what we've already taken away, meaning like half the library, technology space, benches, and move kids into smaller, larger sized classrooms for specialized learning, that we thought if we went after classrooms, it might make sense. I think it's, and based on those discussions, it was a little premature to say that's exactly what we want to do, but we talked about, there's the 4 classrooms that were in this plan. There were the 2 classrooms we called the Cove classroom. So what we talked about is why don't we get pricing on those as separate as well as together. In parallel, talk to Mr. Thompson and Dr. Cheney to look at if we don't have anything for the next 2 years. Let's say we get nothing for the next 2 years. What does our central school look like? How do we set that school up for success, those students, for the population growth? We have a small 4th grade class leaving. We have a large kindergarten class moving into 1st grade. We have another large kindergarten class coming in. So our net effect is 50 students next year. So, and then, so a whole lot we discussed right there. Willing to take this into pieces now. But that's the output from the building committee was break it up further. We could get 50% votes. And what does our school look like in the next 2 years if we don't have space? So, and for asking board members to have discussion with council and listen.
No, I think you, that really kind of characterizes the conversation that we had at the building committee. And, I have met with Dr. Cheney to have some preliminary conversation about the increased enrollment. And, we've been talking about some temporary solutions. None of them are good. I would say that all of the solutions that we've been talking about do have an impact on the instructional program. whether that is for our, our UA classes, taking away a music space or an art classroom, or increasing class sizes to reduce overall sections. None of these are desirable outcomes, but they are all things that would be taken into consideration. Right now we're in the midst of kindergarten registration, so it's difficult right now to tell you what the overall impact will be, not knowing how many sections of kindergarten we'll need. But I will have some additional input at a future meeting to be able to let you know what direction we need to go, but we do need to do something.
I had a question on the capital reserve. So we have $750,000. Are we getting any interest on that? Is there any, is that invested or is it just sitting there?
Well, so the funds are held by the town's trustees of the trust fund, and it is earning interest. There is a balance between earning interest, and I believe that that's a collateralized investment. So if something were to happen to the bank or the investment vehicle, we would still be covered.
Okay.
When you get into having a better return, then you're getting into more expensive space. We're not as much as I would like to earn on that money, but we have to balance between capital and return on investment.
So with the way that inflation is right now, and we're being conservative as I think we should be, if we're not using it over the next year, we're kind of losing money over time. So we might as well use it now, because otherwise we're kind of giving money away.
Yeah, we'd be earning better interest than we have been in any of the recent years, but
Still not keeping up with
it's
inflation.
probably not keeping up with inflation. So. And we don't have control over that investment. That's through the town.
And with that in mind, like you said, if we're not using it, we're losing out on it. I guess, how soon can we make it a priority to figure out what we do with that money? We know something needs to be done, whether it is due to security, whether it is for security or additional classrooms, and I think the longer we wait, the more our kids lose out.
I would agree.
I think the tough thing about it is that we have in the $700,000 range currently. We may be able to move over $1 million from surplus. It's at 1.7, but all of our projects have been $2 million minimum.
Right.
So you really need to aggregate.
In other discussions, Dave brought up basically getting a quote as soon as we can on what we can do with hypothetical 1.75 million.
Well, I think for me, I don't think banking on the 1.75. I think what it would come down to is let's get a quote on the 4 classrooms, the 2 classrooms, and then 6 together. And then that helps to weigh in on our decision of what we go after next year in a warrant article, as well as next year maybe something in the operating budget. Because if in the operating budget we can add money to that, we can look at past 9 years, 10 years, and I think only one operating budget in the last 10 years did not pass overwhelmingly. One failed out of the last 9 or 10 years, if I remember right. I think that we would have support to pass an operating budget with additional funds allocated to this. So that 1.75 could almost double. Somewhere between 1.75 and 3 million maybe, whatever that looks like. Because if we think about it, we were pushing for a warrant article for a bond that was going to be about 1.25, 1.5 million, right? And if we as a board last year had felt confident that that's the right thing to do, well, would we as a board feel confident that's the right thing to do for a 1-year hit to add to the 1.75?
So I just wanted to clarify, when you talk about the 2 and the 4 and the 6, the 2 is the alcove
Yep.
in the interior, the 4 would be the 4 that we had
Right.
on this past
Right.
proposal,
Correct.
and the 6 would be all together.
Right, and if we think about, if we think about the plan from last year, it wasn't just the 4 classrooms. Anybody thinks that we're just getting 4 classrooms, we need to look at that plan with them and say, actually, we were getting like 6+ classrooms. You were getting the 4, we're moving the administration wing down,
Correct.
right? We're getting the library, so we're getting another classroom at the library, and where the current library is, and that old current administration was going to be for special education. So we were getting 6 classrooms, and talking to the administration, that's part of what we want Mr. Thompson and Dr. Cheney to do. I think is to go and look at that for the next 2 years and validate that that is still what we need, is those 6 essentially classrooms. And as part of that need is to say, what I'm suggesting, and from that building committee, what they're suggesting is look at what are the needs in those 6 classrooms. Is it 4 classrooms without bathrooms, 2 with bathrooms? Because those 2, special education, kindergarten, whatever. So that's part of, before we go out and get the quotes, is really make sure, what do we need in those 6 classrooms? And then we can evaluate later on, what additional monies we would need, either through operating budget and or warrant article for capital reserve.
I would also like to see, once we get to that point, that maybe we put this out to bid to see what we get back for different costs, and we can evaluate from there as well.
What do you mean by that?
Like, if we decide to do one of these projects and do it this way, I think we should go out to bid for who's gonna potentially do the work.
Gotcha.
So we can see what the prices are, see if we can get something competitive, good quality, or maybe we still go with who we have, but I think it's good to know. We do that, we have to do that with the town. If it's something over $5,000, we have to have like 3 bids, so I think makes sense to potentially get another, at least one more bid.
Yep.
So there are a couple different phases to that project, and pricing comes pretty close to the time of the actual warrant article for us, but the preliminary work up front is done now by our contractor, along with TriNet, the owner's project manager, and to seek other bids would probably cost us $10,000 or more, because it's so detail oriented. There's so much that goes into the bids. We have a bid that we have out there now to replace the oil tank at the central school, to excavate it, put a new one in. Jeff Mackey just put that out. That's simple compared to this, compared to how complex these tend to be. But if there is a value proposition, right?
Yeah, that's
a good way to do
thinking
it.
if there is some sort of value to it, then maybe it's not a bad idea.
Yeah, and I'd like the board to keep in mind as well that, there are lease purchase options available out there. I don't know if we can really finance the construction of the building, but the equipment possibly. So that can be a pretty gap, because equipment costs, depending on the project, can be 10 to 20, 25% of the project cost. So if we have cash, the capital reserve or budget, and we need to bridge the gap and get to that next level, that would only require 50% voter approval.
What do you mean by equipment costs? Like, what equipment?
HVAC mostly, systems we have in a building.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think that, okay.
I was gonna say, so that's another maybe option we can look at.
Financing isn't as reasonable as bonds are very inexpensive, but they're, it's not that much of a difference.
Yeah.
It's just for a very small portion of the project, that's.
Right.
Yeah, and I look at those as either operating budget or, so I'm not sure if would make sense at this time. But I think that kind of like, it's going to be a busy couple of weeks, Mr. Thompson, but I think just validating what we would want, if this is, if the board agrees that we should look at what the pricing of these classrooms, just to validate what's in those classrooms so that we can get that bidded and figure out that cost, so we can figure out what is our strategy for that. I think it was a strong, good recommendation of the building committee. It was definitely appreciated of them. but want to make sure the board agrees. And any thoughts to, you know, it's always on the table, go back after the bond again.
I mean, for myself, I just feel like, you know, we've been doing this for years, and it's just not working, and we're out of time.
Yeah.
We can't keep waiting to try to get it to pass.
We're
So
closer
gotta-
to it getting its license to drive
Right.
at this point.
So I think I would be hesitant tying part of the building in with the school budget. I think it would still pass, but I think I don't think that they are the same thing, and I think that voters may need the option to look at it separately. I also, though, think that we could do a one-year bond for 2 classrooms, 4 classrooms, 6 classrooms, and then we could also put forth an if-then and put forth the renovation that we did this year.
Yeah, so first thing, we wouldn't do a one-year bond because it's not what, you know, you wouldn't do a bond for 1 year because you're paying that off in taxes. So that you wouldn't have to do a bond in 1 year.
Okay, it's not a bond, it's just an expenditure.
Correct.
Okay.
That's why a 1 year.
It's 50%.
Would be, I mean, whether we, you know, we can decide later on, but whether we do it on its own warrant article or not, right? Or under the operating, but either way, it's 50%. So whichever way the board wants to go with that, you know, but it's more just looking at the overall cost and trying to fit in what we can get in a year. You know, if we remember, and again, I don't have it in front of me, we can always get a copy of this, the study that was done, but it's, you know, our population is, I don't want to say exploding, it's not like we're doubling, but, you know, 50 this year, a few more the next year, a few more the next year. It's increasing. It's not going down after this.
Well, also, if it costs more to do 4 classrooms this year than it would on the bottom line for taxes to vote in the renovation, and people may be more likely to just make the vote for the renovation so that their taxes are slowly, incrementally increased versus taking a hit in 1 year.
Yeah, we've been denied how many years on
More than 10?
going out many years. That's the, and my recommendation, I mean, again, we have to find what the cost is, but my recommendation would be keep under what we are proposing would be a yearly hit. So if we were saying it was between 1 and 1.5, then stay under that for whatever we would look for in the coming year. So again, we'll figure it out once we know more, but I think tonight was more to get the board's response of, do we think we should go after looking at pricing for the classrooms?
I fully support the idea of finding out pricing, and then from there we can toss ideas around on how to present it to the voters.
I agree.
All right, so Mr. Thompson, do you think for the April 11th meeting that you would be able to come back to the board with bulletize whatever for the classrooms, what you would be looking for, what would make the most sense?
Yeah, we can certainly reach out to the project management company even this evening.
Yeah, I'm thinking more making sure what you and Dr. Cheney think about the
Oh.
4 and the 2
Yep.
as far as what would
Utilization of space.
utilization of
Yep,
space.
absolutely. But in tandem, we will certainly reach out to the project
Okay.
management company and begin the dialogue of looking at pricing, and we can get a meeting on the books.
Okay. All right. Anything else right now from board members on this?
No, you're going to be busy, because you also need to make sure you
I'm
save
always busy.
You always need to make sure you save $1 million this year.
That's right. Yeah.
No,
Maybe thought budget season was busy.
1.15. Remember that, 1.15 million. That's, no, but no, I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anything else that I left off? Anybody on this? Questions, comments? All right. You good?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight something that we've discussed is, knowing that, perhaps the focus of the next project might be the additional classroom spaces, and the board is asking for some recommendations in terms of safety, specifically at the central school. Any safety enhancements that we do at the central school are really a short-term fix. And really, when we look long-term at maximizing security at the central school, The only avenue I see for doing that is in addition to the building. And that is not only my opinion, it's also the opinion of Homeland Security. And I just put that out there so the community doesn't believe that there's some alternative solution to security. There is none. The solution is in addition to the Central School, the new main office.
Right. All right. Thank you. So, again, April 11th, busy time to review recommendations that we want to start investing in the security and looking at recommendations on the classroom. So,
Absolutely.
thank you. All right. Next, we are going to turn this over to Mr. Dowd for the financial audit.
Yep. So you have the 2021 financial audit report on the agenda. The audit is complete with one exception, and that was our OPEB, our other post-employment benefits report, which is put together by an actuary, which is a GASB requirement under GASB 75, always fun. That report was prepared, and I put the brakes on because the numbers jumped around a little too much for my liking. So the actuary and I have been going back and forth over the past week to try and make sure that the data is good and that their assumptions are good. We're looking at OPEB beginning of the year of about 12 million as of the beginning of the 2021 year, jumping up to 24 million, doubling, jumping back down to 19 million as it is. So I spent some time on that. The report itself, our auditors are done. They're actually pretty much done on 22 as well. But this OPEB covers both reports. So that's held up to 21 report, however. So held up the issuance of the report. So, but I did send that over to our auditors today. So they have the report. They was very grateful to get it. And I said, yep, there it is. So just a matter of pushing it out on their end.
So you think we're still on target for the April timeframe for the 21, is what you're saying?
Yeah, and then 22 really won't be far behind.
Right, in 22, I think we said May to June tops.
Yep. Yep, they've done their field work. They were out a few weeks ago, which is good. We had a few people who were quite sick for the past week, so they were out before that, which is helpful. I think everyone's sick, but they've been out to do that too.
Okay.
So that's it.
Any questions about the audit status? So thank you for getting this back on target and back on plan to what we proposed. So thank you, Mr. Dowd. All right. Next one is the 2022-2023 superintendent evaluation cycle. As we do every year, we kick this off directly at the first meeting and begin that process in accordance with CBIR, the evaluation of superintendent. Melissa, can you remind me, that will kick off and we will get the 360 feedback, right? Oh.
I actually have to look at it too. So it's in your packets if you want to refer to the condensed version of CBI-R.
Yep.
So the 360 direct report feedback, that goes out to the direct reports. And the board members fill out the superintendent's evaluation, and that would be shown on page 2 of that small packet insert. And the superintendent uses that form as well.
Yep.
Did that kind of answer your question?
Perfect.
Okay.
You say it better than me, and you've done it a long time, so I appreciate your input on that. And then for Mr. Cabarrus here, we go through the evaluation, we go in non-publics, we review it, mark it up in red a lot. But we review it and talk as a school board about what the findings were from both direct reports, Mr. Thompson's input, and then ours as well. And as you can read through, and for those at home, we spent some time updating this. But by May 31st, we'll go into non-public to approve the written evaluation of the superintendent and then provide the chair and vice chair, my friend Aaron Pellegrini and I, will go to talk to Mr. Thompson by June 15th. So it's a little bit of a process, takes a little bit of time, but it definitely goes through thoroughly. So unless there's any questions for that, that's pretty much where we're at. So we'll get the evaluations for next meeting. But for Mr. Thompson's direct reports, they will receive it right after this meeting.
Yes, with your directive, I can get that going tomorrow.
There you go. There's the directive. Let's get that going. Thank you, Melissa. All right. This one's going to be an interesting conversation. I'm interested to see where this goes in the coming months. I know we spoke about it very briefly at the last meeting, but Mr. Thompson to give an update on the Pennsylvania Pinkerton Academy committee on the student start time.
Yeah, at this time, the update is there really is no update. I've been in touch with Dr. Powers, the head of school for Pinkerton, and we are looking at setting up the first meeting. But as of right now, we have not held our first meeting yet. And again, this came in response to a conversation that we had at the winter meeting, which included the superintendents, the school boards of the sending town, as well as the Board of Trustees. There was a presentation that was done by a pediatrician who also serves on one of the school boards, discussing the benefits of a later start time for high school students. And so the idea is to get the stakeholders together, review some of that information, and look at the logistics of a possible start time adjustment for Pinkerton. Once the process is underway, it would be my intention to get feedback from staff, from community members, and even students where as appropriate, so that I can go back to the committee with the community feedback. So more information to come as the process begins.
I forget if we shared it to the board members, but I think it'd be good to, if we can get a copy of that presentation.
Absolutely, I
to the board
can
members,
certainly do that.
just to see what was said and just some of the findings. So I think they did it right. It was good to hear it, because when I first heard it, I'm like, what do you mean we're going to do this? But it was good how they did it. I feel that by first going into studying, does this make sense? Even to bring it to and looking at what other schools do, look at the benefits, from doctors' point of views and physicians about student sleep patterns. I think if you have teenagers, they like to stay up late, get in, go to bed late. So it's all about being late. But I think it was just good to see what the physicians had to say about it. So.
Absolutely.
All right. Next one. Last day of school for students. The prelim discussion on this, Mr. Thompson.
All right. So in your school board packet, you'll find a copy of the 2022-2023 school calendar. The original calendar, with accounting for no snow days, had the last day of school as an early release day on June 16th. As the community is aware, we've actually had 2 snow days, and we've had 2 remote days. So I'm presently working with my school administrative team and input from teachers into making a recommendation to the board for the last student day of school. Again, this doesn't impact the number of working days of teachers. This really is for students specifically. And right now, the challenge is that right now the last day of school is on the 16th, which is a Friday. And if, moving into the following week with no additional snow days, I'm not really sure that makes all that much sense. So the reason I'm not prepared to make that recommendation today is it's still March, and the possibility of additional snow days. So we don't want to jinx ourselves. But I would be looking to come to the board on April 11th, should we not have snow days, and make a recommendation that we keep the 16th the last day of school. Instead of a half day, we'd make it a full day. And then what that would mean is we would have professional development for our staff on the 20th, which is the 19th, which is a Monday, the 20th, and the 21st. And that will allow us to get through all of the required trainings that are always, we're always looking to get caught up on, as well as additional professional development. But so I welcome any input you have, but again, I'd like to hold off until April 11th just to see what the weather does over the next couple of weeks.
Just for my own benefit, is that typical that you have the professional development at the end of the school year?
It has been. The requirement for required trainings over the last few years has increased. A good example is 3 years ago they added a requirement for 2 hours of suicide prevention. It is difficult to get everything into staff meetings, early release days. So having that at the end of the year is helpful. The board has in the past reduced the number of student days by 1 to add a professional development day, so there is past practice to do so.
Okay.
Not all of our PE days are at the, are
Oh,
typically-
no, yeah, they're scattered
Oh,
throughout the
sure,
school.
sure.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if that was standard practice to have some PD days at the end of the year. The only reason I would question that would be the same reason why it might be difficult to hold an exam for students on the
absolutely.
last day of school is, are they
Not
retaining
ideal.
information? Are they learning? Or do they want to be there? That's the only reason I would question that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, part of the end of the year too is, you know, just a lot of administrative tasks that just need to get done before folks head off to the summer, whether it's, you know, final grades, cleaning up your room, you know, planning goals, things like that. So there's a number of things that need to be done. There's just never enough time.
The flip side of that too is if you don't put it at the end of the year, you have to put it at the beginning of the year. And there's only so much professional development you can do in a row before teachers' brains cook. And
Sure.
It's not effective either. Something that came up and that I didn't think about is June 19th is now a federal holiday. We, as a local, do not have to observe that, but that was something that that has come up in a couple other districts. There's no language in our contract,
Right.
but just something to be aware of.
Got it. Understood.
Yeah, and just to speak to that, in the state of New Hampshire, it's not a recognized holiday. And again, the holidays are typically driven by the collective bargaining agreement, which does not include Juneteenth. We run into something similar with President's Day and the recognition of President's Day on the actual President's Day.
Right. Okay. All right. So stay tuned. And I guess is that really the start of being able to plan other events at the end of the school year as well?
It is. So the big event that Mrs. Milbury and I have been having conversations about is the sort of end of the year 8th grade celebration, which is not a school event, but obviously we want to be able to work with the folks planning that. And so, Mrs. Milbury, do we have a date for that, or is that still in progress? Well, graduation, which also impacts the 8th grade celebration as well. The end of the year party that the parents plan.
Oh, so that is right now scheduled for the 15th. That does impact graduation. That's when we want to graduate.
Yep. So we're looking at that. Yeah, the end of the year, what do they officially call that celebration?
They call it the 8th grade semi,
The
semi-formal.
The 8th grade semi-formal right now is scheduled for June 15th, was scheduled for June 15th.
All right. Would we expect on the 11th to hear about 8th grade graduation also, or is that something further down once we announce what the last day is?
I mean, I think we can have a plan ready to go based on your decision and have that discussion as a time.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. This is last day. Okay, board liaison assignment discussion. All right. So this one is the one that takes a little bit of time. We want to go through this. Board members, what you'll find in your packet is what we signed up for last year for 2022, 2023. A total of 12, is it 12? No, it's 10, sorry. Can't count here. 10 different assignments, one which has already been taken by Dr. Hubner. Thank you. And in each one of these have, it's a different responsibilities depending on what they are. Typically, we do go through to look at assigning board members at the next meeting, but this is to put out there what is up for volunteering or voluntolding, depending on. I know that there's a strong desire for vouchers by somebody next to me on the right, but we can go through, and I think it's good to just go through these and just talk about what they are, especially new board members, so they can understand. And so what I'd like to do is for those that are here, I know we've got one member who's no longer with us that can't speak to a couple, but we can step in for them, just to talk about what these liaison assignments mean and what we typically do or look to do. So I'll kick it off since I'm the first one on top left. On facilities, so I mean with Mr. Mackey, this past year was kind of light because I'd say after 3 years of doing this with Mr. Mackey, I don't know the school as well as him, but I know a lot of what he does, and so it's a little bit easier to go through as I've done it for a number of years. But this one would be meeting with Mr. Mackey a few times, going through the building, understanding what's in the building. I think any board member should do this, whether or not you're on facilities. But then as we get into budget seasons, we go through what is being requested, discuss what else is out there, and try to narrow it down. So we'll go down student services.
Student services is special education, enrichment, ELL, those sort of programs. Again, around budget time, it becomes more meaty because you have to go through and examine the budget and work with the head of student services, who's amazing. Thank you. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Technology?
Not a whole lot of scheduled meetings there, just basically touching base with members of our technology team, making sure that they have what they need, getting a feel for what they're working on, what our protection is, what our internet protection services look like. It's just a lot of conversation back and forth, especially before meetings here.
All right. Policy committee.
Yeah, so the policy committee meets it's in my calendar.
It's the third Tuesday.
Tuesday, one Tuesday per month, and we review many different policies and update them and then bring them to the board. So there's an opening there too.
I think with that one, there was a recommendation by the auditors that there were some older policies. So I think in that one is, looking at some of those older policies in the coming year to make sure we're all up to date. So
yeah, there's looking at older policies, and then sometimes a new one needs to be created for certain reasons, or some of them just have language that needs to be updated, and sometimes we just look through them and like, well, it doesn't really sound right, so we try to fix some of the wording based on different statutes that come up that that the district sees. They recommend things get changed and things like that. So it's actually really good. I joined it last year just to try to get a better feel for some of the policies and what's going on, and I have found it beneficial. So.
Communication committee.
We put this in last year. This was something new that we decided to work on last year. So this one is still a work in progress, but basically it's a liaison to the town and different committees throughout the town. We have a communication committee in town that puts out the newsletter. So giving them some information on what we're working on, things that we're pressed on here, so that we can get that out to more of the community and more of the community members. Something that we had suggested that maybe was affiliated with being the vice chair. Hint. But again, being something that we implemented last year and being a work in progress, something that we should continue to discuss and evolve.
Dr. Hubner, if you just want to talk about the next two together, but they're just different schools, so.
So it's approximately kind of like student services. Again, your liaison, the major part is during budget season. What I didn't realize last year is during the work session, you can only do one of these at a time. So like facilities, HMS, HCS, and student services, it'd probably be beneficial to have 4 different people on those because I wasn't able to work in both work sessions at the same time.
Gotcha. All right. Erin's favorite, one that she's grasping at and won't give up. No.
I told you about
Vouchers.
So, as I'm sure you're seeing, when you come onto the board, all of a sudden you have to sign all these documents, and you're like, what am I signing? I don't know who these people are and why have they given them all this money. I was interested in that reason to try to figure out what exactly I was signing off for. So basically, Lisa Gove at the SAU will send a message saying, hey, they're ready to go, and there's stacks of them, of basically receipts on the desk. And I do flip through all of them. Sometimes I make notes for things that are $25 just because I have questions. But there's been some things that I had questions on that now I don't have questions on because I know what it is. So I do think that that's a very valuable thing to know.
Yeah.
All right. Safety committee?
So Safety Committee has regular meetings with the heads of the schools, Jessica Parsons, Superintendent Thompson, a representative from the fire department and police department, and we just talk over concerns and try to make the school as safe as possible.
All right. Let's say, Mr. Cabarrus, do you have any questions about any of these? Or?
No?
All right.
Great explanations, everyone.
All right, so at the next board meeting, we'll plan to facilitate the discussion of who wants what. So we'll set up a boxing ring right here. The crowd can watch, see who comes out. All right. All right, thank you all very much for that. All right, so now, speaking of policy committee, we have a lot of reading ahead of us here. And one of the things with the policy's first reading is we ask the liaisons to give us an overview of what we are reading. So for Mr. Cabarrus, we typically go through, do a first policy reading, and then it gives us time between now and next meeting to digest, really review, and then come back to the second meeting and ask more questions before we accept them into the records. So without further ado, I'd ask Ms. Pellegrini, if you wouldn't mind walking us through each of these and explaining what we're up against.
All right, do you want to just go through all of them first, or?
You want to do one at a time? Say, like, the first one's DID, fixed asset, and inventories. Let's
Yeah.
go, and then we'll go through that, then go to the next.
All right, so DID fixed asset inventories, I think. This policy needs to be developed based on adverse finding and on audits. These adverse findings have been discussed at many board meetings. This will give more detail, including provision of capital assets, asset examples, defining threshold types, and the proper treatment of assets when acquired, depreciated, and disposed of. So this is what we've talked, what Jeff's talked about multiple times at the meeting.
Yep. And I think for this one, our plan was that this would still be a finding in our 2021 and our 22 audits, and that our 2023 audit is when it would first hopefully come off of that audit. So for Mr. Cabarrus, what we've had our finding going back many years is we didn't have a way to do depreciation of our assets like our buildings.
Yep.
So it was always a finding to say, you don't have a way to say what this is expenditure and what it costs.
Are the assets tracked in the ERP system alongside everything?
They can be. They can be. We have not, because we had not you have to really go back and onboard all the assets.
Right.
Which, having discussions with our audit team, they become much more flexible with, which is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to certainly the construction of Central School, the different iterations here from the 70s. But we do have a fixed asset module in ERP that we use, and we did use at Timberlane to track those assets.
Okay. So are there plans to get those into the ERP?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little more than that, but yeah, there are. So.
All right. I won't belabor
The recommendation of the
Questions?
auditor was to start with this policy.
Okay.
That was the first step in developing that capital assets inventory, was the policy. So.
Okay.
The former policy really, or the policy as it exists now, didn't really speak to the fixed asset inventories the way that we need them to be reflected on our books.
But, yeah, ask questions. That's what, you know,
Okay.
don't hold back. All right, so next one, Aaron?
Okay, so policy JLCJA, sports injuries. This policy is required by law and is a policy that is not currently on the books. Sample policy by NHSBA was created to facilitate compliance with RSA 200:40-C, which requires the creation of emergency plans for sports-related injuries, protocols for gathering health records from student athletes engaging in sports, and procedures overseeing return to play following injury. So the policy committee just changed some wording of the sample policy by NHSBA in this case.
Any questions from anybody on that?
I'm assuming we already have procedures for sports injuries.
We do have procedures, yeah.
Okay.
This would just codify it in policy based upon the RSA that was passed last year.
That's what I figured. Thank
And
you.
we have to have these plans in place for the beginning of the 2023 school year, so we are still on track.
The next one kind of goes with it.
Yeah.
So I can read that one now too.
Aaron, would you mind speaking up a little?
Sorry. So JLCJA, where JLCJA is a new policy, once adopted, it would require revision of JLCJ. We'll change the grades 4 through 12 to K through 8. And then in there, NHIAA does not include middle school, so we're adding tri-county because it follows the NHIAA rules. Did I get that?
That is correct.
Also a note on that, the superintendent has until 2023-2024 school year to develop and institute a sports injury emergency action plan. However, he's not delaying this due to the importance of having this.
Board members, any questions? Good.
Just on this, I like the idea of that there's a duty report for anybody employed by the school, not just coaching, but specifically school-wide, because sometimes students will hide injuries from coaches that will appear in the school, and you know, it's in their best interest that anybody that has this suspicion will report it.
Very good. All right, Aaron, next one?
Ready for the next one?
Ready for the next one?
All right.
Let's go.
EBCA, emergency plans. This suggests revisions for NHSBA sample policy to conform to amended RSA 189:64. This is now called the Emergency Operations Plan. And then due date for submission is now October 15th. Principals will need to get the plan to the superintendent by October 1st for review, and then the superintendent will give the final submission. There were 2 small text changes made. Also, there are references to EG-R, which we do not have, so that's being looked into.
And just, I think a question for Mr. Thompson on this one. So this just goes in line with what we've done in the past with having various, police departments in town and that do different, what do you want to call them, but, exercises, right?
Yeah, that is correct. And the previous statute was that we submitted those plans to the Department of Education, and then the Department of Education reviewed them and sent them to the Department of Safety. This sort of takes the Department of Ed out of it, and we communicate directly with the Department of Safety, which makes sense.
Yep. And do we expect that now that it's going to, a different department, that there'll be a little bit more oversight on this?
So the plan that we use and that the vast majority of school districts in the state of New Hampshire use is a template that is provided by the Department of Safety.
Okay.
So if you were to look at these plans, they look very, very similar. And what typically happens in the summer at the end of the school year is if there's going to be changes to the template that are recommended, the Department of Safety will send out a new template and we will update it.
Okay.
So this previous year, we did update the template based upon some additional scenarios they asked us to account for.
All right, thank you.
And something I really appreciate that Superintendent Thompson and our administration does is it's not just a plan that sits on a shelf, but they actually do role-playing scenarios, because you're not going to consult a book to see what you're doing when the first things came up. So they are on the same page. They do have that fluidity, and they're able to respond to stuff like this.
I'm telling you, number 5, bring us home. We're halfway there.
EB, CB, emergency egress and relocation drill. This policy was modified to better coordinate with the provisions of RSA 189:64 relating to all hazard drills, including revisions to that statute by 2019 New Hampshire laws, Chapter 20, HB 123, as well as provision by policy EBCA. Some grammar and text edits were made, and instances of policy EH are being changed to EHB, and EH-R is being changed to EHB-R.
Sorry, just reading this.
That's near the end, where it's being changed.
Yeah,
It's near the end.
no, it's just more, this is the information I was looking for, just the number of drills.
Oh, we talked about that, the number of drills.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a requirement of 10 drills. And so the change in this is that 4 of those drills need to be all hazards. So moving away from simply just doing 10 evacuation drills.
Yeah.
And then the requirement now is that there needs to be an armed assailant drill, so an active shooter drill, which is different from a lockdown drill. And this is something that the district is in compliance with, because we've partnered with the Department of Homeland Security to do these tabletop exercises, the next of which is actually on April 5th at Central School, and that satisfies the requirement of the active shooter drill.
So, I know in the past we had talked, Mr. Thompson, about what training teachers are receiving for this. And again, I'm not even going to try to get into the training you all have to go through, which I appreciate. But if you were to look at a percentage of our teachers that have been through the training for this, where would you say that is?
So we have adopted the research-based model called ALICE, and that has been spearheaded by our school resource officer. And in order to become an ALICE certified school, there's a percentage that I don't know off the top of my head, but I can tell you that includes the majority of our staff, if not close to all of them.
Okay.
And what I can do is, in my Friday report to the board, I can include that information so that you have it.
Yeah, that'd be good. What else, when you say, and I know that there's other responses out there other than ALICE, right, that other schools may follow. Can you speak, and if not right now, maybe it's in a future meeting, why ALICE is appropriate and why that was chosen? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I think there's been, unfortunately, with the increased number of school incidents, they are studied, and they look at possible responses. And, there used to be, the idea was the lockdown. You go into lockdown, you stay put, you're quiet, the lights are off. And now they realize that the model of run, hide, fight, which is ALICE, which is a couple of other programs, are far more successful in the event of an active shooter. Get out. Specific to ALICE, again, the decision to go to ALICE was made previous to my tenure. I can certainly look into why ALICE specifically was selected.
Maybe for, what we were talking about earlier for the April 11th, and I know there's a lot to get between now and then, but maybe to just look at our response of what we're doing, as well as training as part of that as well. Not just 4 walls of a building, but also what can we do to support students and teachers with either training or skill sets, et cetera.
Absolutely. What I appreciate about ALICE is the developmental continuum, right? How we talk to kindergartners about, incidents of school violence is very different than how we talk to 8th graders.
Right.
And I think that in the selection of that product, that was certainly a consideration. And we're very fortunate that our school resource officer is a trained ALICE instructor, which is a resource that the district has that a lot of other schools don't have, to actually have someone on staff who not only knows the model, but is able to instruct others. So.
Nope, he's really good, and we're appreciative of
Yep.
him. All right, I'll push it over to Aaron for the 6th one.
My battery's dead in my mic, so sorry about that. Okay, 6, BEC non-public minutes. This is a change in statute. The revision is to clarify when these sessions may occur, to bolster confidentiality provision, and to align with New Hampshire Ed Rule 303.01F, substantive duties of the school board. We're already following this. The policy just needed to be updated. Do you need that, or? Okay. Bless you.
Got that one out of the way. Yep.
Are you ready for the next one, or are there any questions on that?
No questions.
Okay. DGA authorized signatures. This is updating outdated information. Revision gives more structure to who should be signing documents on behalf of the district, more clearly reflects the provisions of RSA 197:23-A, and recognizes the use of electronic signatures in pre-approval of payments. Any questions? Okay.
I think with this one, it's, my mind goes to like what's happened in other communities with, let's just say, funds being transferred places they shouldn't be. And I think that Peterborough was one that happened just last year, if I remember right.
Construction.
Was that?
The bridge construction and the
Right.
funds being transferred, yeah.
Right. So, is this impacted because of that? Was this looked to be updated because of that, something like that?
No.
Okay.
No, not that I'm aware of. No.
No, we do have obviously some electronic signature practice that we have not captured in policy.
Okay.
But it was never an authorization issue in Peterborough, a signature issue in Peterborough, was that they sent them to the wrong people.
Right.
It was an authorized payment to the wrong bank account.
Thank you.
All right, number 8, EHAC, electronic digital records and signatures. This is a new policy. Once adopted, the data governance will also be updated to reference EHAC. And then just a note that EHAC does already reference data governance.
All right, any questions for Aaron on that one? All right. So board members, we will be looking for a motion to move these to second reading. Second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussions amongst these 8 policies? Well done, Aaron. Thank you for giving a very nice overview. Appreciate it. It's you, Miss Helpful. All right. All approved? All right, thank you. All right. Board comments and correspondence. So for this one, Mr. Cabarrus, we go around seeing what the board has been a part of, anything to bring to the board's attention as far as what we've seen in schools or throughout the community. So we usually start on down, Mr. Giard.
All set.
Good. Ms. Pellegrini.
So I was not here at that last meeting because I was attending the New Hampshire Technical Honor Society induction, which was great. So congratulations to all those students. And I did get the opportunity to go to the Wizard of Oz play. I took my son because he used to do stage crew, and it was great. It was really, really, really a great show. And Mo did an amazing job. An excellent lion in there. But they really all did such a good job, and so many of those kids did dual roles, and it was really good. Congratulations to all of them.
For me, I'll start Wizard of Oz. I was very impressed. You know, I always go in there, and I mean this in the best. I go in there, it's a middle school play. It's a middle school musical. It's going to be good. It blew me away. I mean, and I always expect to see the main actors and actresses doing really well. When you see all the people in the background and how excited they were and how they're always moving, they're always singing, they're always doing something, it was great to see. I also had the privilege on the 2 out of 3 shows that I went to, I was sat next to the ones doing the lighting. Even they were on target. Even they were having the time of their life, that they enjoyed what they were doing. They're excited. They were already talking about they want to do it next year. So to have all the students that captivated and just enjoying their passions, it was really great to see. Yeah. So the STEAM night was amazing. I don't know, if enough people understand what happens that night. We had a few years that it wasn't going on, and I hope that it builds back up to be community members just stopping in. I was blown away because this is, I hate to say this, I think this was the first one I've ever been to. I might have been one before, but even with my younger children, they were blown away, and they had so much fun, and they were talking about how are they going to do that in school when they get to that age. Last time at one of the last board meetings there, we had students showing how to program robots with their TI calculators. I could barely open my TI calculator in school, never mind program a robot. So to see what they were doing, so impressive. It's great to see how we're investing in the students. So kudos to everyone involved in this team. A number of building committees, I don't even know how many I've been to since the last meeting, but just really good dialogue. Hoping that, I know we intend to continue that, and I think that having more community members to participate would always be beneficial. So if anybody out there wants to see behind the scenes what's going on in the discussions, by all means, reach out to Mr. Thompson. I feel like I'm missing something here, but I'll just move on. I think that's all I got. Mr. Cabarrus?
I'll echo all the sentiments on the middle school play. This was my first one that I had been to, and I was just blown away. So entertained, so proud of a lot of the students that I had subbed in the past. Just seeing them up on stage was just awesome. A lot of them, performed beyond their years. They had just seasoned stage presence, so awesome to see. And then I also had the pleasure of going and watching a Pinkerton play this past weekend, Anastasia, and that was awesome, just seeing the progression of what plays can be as high school students, and seeing those in close succession was just really cool. Really awesome opportunity to see kids just expressing themselves in that way. So.
We had the safety committee meeting today, which I felt was really productive. The one thing that came up is, interestingly enough, is we need people to be more rude when it comes to people entering buildings. It is, human nature to be nice and try to hold doors open, but we really need people when they're coming out of the buildings to not allow people in the buildings, that they have to go through the proper security checkpoints. So, but besides that.
Fantastic point.
Yep. Something to echo. Be rude at school. Yes.
You can quote me.
All right. I won't be rude, and I will turn this over to Mr. Thompson now for consent agenda.
Yeah, so under personnel report, in your school board packets, you will find the nomination of one professional staff member, that is Tara McLaughlin, who I am nominating as the HCS Technology Integration Teacher.
Then we'll be looking for a motion for the nomination.
I motion to accept the nomination.
I'll second that. All discussion? All approved?
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And welcome, Ms. Tara McLaughlin.
Great. And moving on to the superintendent's report, I think we'll get started by having our Director of Student Services, Jessica Parsons, give us an update on the district's MTSSB work.
My toe should
Multi-
somewhat,
System of support.
don't ask me, I'm the wrong one to ask.
Behavior. Okay, we'll work on it.
All
It's
right, we
okay.
got it.
That's my job. So I wanted to provide you an update on our work. As you know, this might help spark your memory. Back in October, we were awarded a grant for $24,000. Do you guys remember that? Okay, awesome. So we've done a lot of work since that time. And remember, the money was awarded to Hsd to advance our multi-tiered systems of support for behavioral health and wellness, and essentially a universal prevention strategy, because we know if we do all those things really well with behavioral health and wellness, that more than likely we're building in protective factors that are going to prevent, and preventative strategies around the misuse of substances, or misuse and prevention of substances. So once we were awarded that grant, we got moving. We created teams in each building, MTSSB teams in each building. They called them something a little bit different because they were newer teams, but each building developed a team, and from that team, they funneled up some members into a district team. So we kind of had this triangle: district team, 2 building teams, and from there, we had 4 members participate in a statewide MTSSB framework training. It was free, but it helped us kind of kick off how we should set up frameworks in each of our buildings. So we had teams, we had members from each building participating in that. In addition to that, Nicole Tomaselli attended Excellence Through Equity Conference, and at that conference, Oyster River presented some really cool and amazing stuff they were doing, and it really centered around restorative practices and circles. And really, it just is about having kind, honest, and open conversations with students, modeling that with adults, and being able to have difficult and tough conversations when needed. So, for instance, some of the things that they were doing at Oyster River is if there was an incident at recess, and there may have been a disagreement between some peers, that the teachers had some language and some guidance around how to bring those kids back inside and circle up and have a conversation about how do we solve this together. Because that's something that can be missing sometimes with, even with adults, is being able to problem solve or work through some of that stuff. So they observed some really great stuff when they went there. And when they came back, we debriefed. There was a visit to their middle school, there was a visit to their elementary school. Those teams came back and they debriefed, and what they said was, we don't really want a curriculum yet. What we really want is an overall philosophical shift, and essentially a common language and philosophy across the district. And so that needs to come from some sort of practice that we all engage in together. And so we investigated, we did some research. The program that Oyster River was using was no longer publicly available. And so the next best thing was we reached out to Suffolk University, because they have a Center for Restorative Justice and Practices. They offer a Tier 1 training, which is very consistent with what we would like to do as a district. So I'm just going to read a little bit about what that training entails, but it's Tier 1, so it's for everybody, all teachers, all staff members that work or support kids, and it's an intro to restorative practices and circle training. And so it's a 2-day experiential training that prepares teachers and staff to design and facilitate restorative circles and participate directly in experiences, understand the elements, philosophies, rituals, and practices. And the training just explores how we can co-create restorative spaces, relationships, with not only students, but colleagues, and building norms and expectations within our building. So everybody has a common understanding and language around community and building that sense of community. And they do this through healthy and open conversations, creating a sense of belonging, enhancing culture, and community and climate within both of the buildings. So really that's what the trainings are going to center on, is to help us build this common understanding that we weave throughout our district. And so once we presented what that training was, the team said yes, we want to move this forward. So the MTSS district team has been working with the building teams to create cohorts of teams that will participate in this training. It is a 2-day training, and part of that 2-day training will include their trainers coming here to Hampstead. We've procured venues to have that training, but they only will train 20 people at a time. And the reason they do that is because it's such an intimate training where they want us to be able to practice and engage with each other and start to really go through some of these practices that we are then hopefully going to practice with our peers and then practice with our students. And so our first training is set to kick off. Our first cohort of staff are set to kick off their training for April 4th. Again, all of this will be funded through the work, through the Promising Futures grant that we procured. At this point, we have funding enough to fund 4 out of the 5 cohorts that we would need. So the funding from the grant has really been supportive of this practice that we're going to move forward with. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. So that's kind of where a bulk of our money is going, but there are other programs that we're doing as well to support this process. I'm actually going to have Julie come in at another, Julie Barbick, our district social worker, to come into one of our next board meetings because I want her to present what will be happening in the 2nd grade in May is a Gizmo program to help support our work around mental health and making sure that kids have the language around emotions to be able to say, hey, I'm having trouble, can you help me? And so building some of that language very early on for kids and understanding that it's okay to use that language of help and where are those people, those protective factors that are going to support you. So what the research shows us is the earlier we can build in those languages and those supports and those protective factors for kids, the more we're going to combat the potential use of substance abuse further down the line. That was a lot of information. Any questions about that?
No, it's really good.
That last piece you said, it's with 2nd graders specifically? Okay.
Yeah, and I can't wait for her to come in because there's a plushy dog. The dog's name's Gizmo. Like it is very developmentally appropriate. I think they said from K all the way up to grade 5. So this is a program that's so Rock brings in. It's actually free, but it just further complements our work that we're doing around kind of that social and emotional wellness for our students.
That's cool.
So do you have the other training scheduled as well?
We do have confirmed dates with Suffolk University. We confirmed those because we didn't want those to get taken up by other school districts. We're still kind of working with each of the buildings to figure out when's the best time to get the right people out of the building. Because it is, we understand and recognize that is a challenge for teachers to be out of their classroom. But what we also know is that if we don't develop professionally and we don't participate in these learning communities, that it's hard for us to grow as a district. And so that's important. And so we have to balance between the two. So we're trying to work with both buildings on finding a happy medium to be able to do this training and also make sure that teachers are getting what they need at the time in their classrooms. And so our other plan is that the first cohort is participating on April 4th, and then their plan is to kind of report out at staff meetings on April 5th to kind of build some and generate some more excitement around us moving this work forward.
That's great. I like that they're reporting out as quickly as possible after they get the information.
And
Great.
Ultimately, our goal is we hope that everybody's going to want to do this, but if the feedback isn't great, then that gives us an opportunity to pivot if we need to.
Yep.
So, all right. No other questions? All right, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. So last Friday, our 3rd grade students visited Pinkerton Academy, went to their maple sugaring house, and they had the opportunity to observe the collection of maple syrup and see the process. It was nice to have students, including former Hsd students, that helped in the presentation. Very jealous because Mr. Dowd had the opportunity to chaperone. I was not asked to, but that's okay. Again, it really fits in. This checks so many boxes. So first of all, our kids had a blast. It was a ton of fun. They get to sample maple syrup, so that's at the top of the list. One, it aligns nicely with so many of the next generation science standards. We also, when we look at the strategic plan, if you look at priority 5, design learning environments to match traditional philosophies, you also have outdoor learning community. As well as, we've discussed a priority for us as a district is what we call the Pinkerton experience, right? And we don't want the first experience that our students have to be in 8th grade when they're getting ready to sign up for their courses. You know, Pinkerton is a big place. It can be a little overwhelming. By the time they reach 8th grade, we want them to have a series of experiences. So this was an experience for our 3rd graders. We have another experience for our 2nd graders. They're going next week, April 5th, to the Stockbridge Theater to see a performance of the Magic School Bus. So we're going to continue to create the Pinkerton experience over the course of the career of a Hampstead student. So when they do walk through the doors freshman year, they're like, oh, I know this place. I know the staff. I'm familiar with it. So I appreciate all of the work, particularly with the Sugar House. Our assistant principal at the Central School, Peter Schmidt, was instrumental in working with Pinkerton to organize that. So I do appreciate that. I'll also add some of the comments that were made about STEAM Night. Just such an amazing night. First of all, the community participation, to see just the number of families getting out, coming to the school, having fun, but the quality of the projects that the students created in the gym, you know, using duct tape and creating these mini golf courses, it was amazing. Like, you could sell some of them. They were that good. And then I also appreciated when you came in here to the CAF to watch students engaging with their parents, educating their parents on coding and robots, and it was kind of like a flipped dynamic. It was the student as the teacher, and it was a ton of fun had by all involved. And as David said, I look forward. This was my first one. And I look forward to future years as well. And let's create more events like that so that more opportunities for families to engage with the school. So in addition, there's actually 2 surveys out there that I would ask that families and our staff take a look at if you haven't had a chance to complete. One I sent out yesterday in a communication. It's called the 603 Bright Future Survey. It's initiated by the Department of Education. They ask a series of questions about your child's school experience. That data is compiled and then provided back to the school district and made public. So if you have an opportunity, please fill out the Bright Future Survey. The second one is, which is still open, is there's a remote learning survey. We've had 2 remote days. We recognize remote days are not ideal. In fact, we'd rather have kids here in person. So we're looking for feedback from families and staff members so that we can make some improvements to the remote learning model. So if you get a chance, please fill both of those out. Also, just to make the community aware, let the board know, the Department of Health and Human Services is auditing the district and our Medicaid to Schools program. This was just a random selection. We're not being audited because there is any known concern. And essentially what Medicaid to Schools is a source of revenue for the district. So when we have children who are Medicaid eligible and they receive medically necessary supports here at school, the school can seek reimbursement from the Department of Health and Human Services. It is a multi-step process which involves a lot of regulation. So the Department of Health and Human Services requested information. It's really a by-mail audit. So I know our Department of Student Services under Jess's leadership is working with them. I mention it because, you know, first of all, audits are a great thing. They help us to improve our processes. I'm sure as a result of this audit, we'll get feedback about how we can improve what we do here at the school. But I also mention it because audits involve time, and there's a significant amount of time that our Department of Student Services will need to dedicate to complying with the audit. And then, you know, as Carl indicated, we met as a district safety committee today to just have ongoing conversations about improving the safety of the building. Each of the buildings, each building has their own safety committee. Last week, we actually met as a district attendance committee as well, talking about ways to reduce school refusal, to get kids to school. You know, we can't work our magic as educators if we can't get kids to show up. And again, I appreciate Jess's work and the work of our school social worker, Julie Barbeck, just doing amazing work. And then finally, for me, I'm getting very excited. I've met with Principal Milbury a couple times now. On May 2nd, our 8th graders are rolling out of here and we're headed back to DC. I'm honored to be able to work with Mrs. Milbury to help plan that trip, and not only plan it, but to actually chaperone it. The itinerary just looks amazing, and what a great opportunity for our kids to go down to DC, have fun, have a shared experience, and learn about the rich history and traditions of our country. So that is my superintendent report. I will entertain any questions or comments that the board might have.
And for me, it's just great they're doing more field trips. I mean, you know, I remember third grade was when I did the Sugar Shack, but in the little town I was in, it was awesome. So it's something kids remember. So
Excellent.
that's awesome, creating core memories. All right. And anything else? Then we got other business, old business, don't have any. So just need to make a couple checks here. All right, we are going to enter into a non-public,
Under J.
yeah, which we will come out of, but we won't go back on TV, so this will be the end of it. I'm looking for a motion to go into non-public RSA 91A3 to under J.
So moved.
Motion second.
Second.
Any discussion?
Sorry, who had the second on that? Thank you. Mr. Giard?
Yes.
Dr. Hubner?
Yes.
Mr. Cabarrus?
Yes.
Mrs. Pellegrini? And Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. The time is 9:15.